The tiger-striped flag of Mysore Sultanate fluttered over the Vellore fort. After 7 years, Tipu was killed. Tipu's son, Shahzada Hyder Ali, was proclaimed king by the Indian sepoys who mutinied against the East India Company. On the fateful day of 10th July 1806, the sepoys had taken the Vellore fort and hoisted the Sultanate flag. They wanted to inspire widespread uprising against the British. For a moment, it felt they achieved their goal, but it all went wrong. Hi, my name is Dheren Azad, and in today's origin story, I will take you through the causes of the Vellore Mutiny of 1806, its failure, and its absolute unpopularity. The Vellore Mutiny was the first large-scale and organized mutiny by Indian sepoys against the British East India Company in 1806, half a century before the revolt of 1857. It was the first sign of Indians defying the colonial rulers to bring back native rulers. The sepoys were frustrated with the lack of standardized salaries, but more importantly, they were agitated by the company's new dress code, which offended their religious sentiments. The new code forbade Indian sepoys from wearing caste marks to improve their soldierly look. Hindus were forbidden to wear tilaks, while Muslims were asked to shave off their beards, trim their moustaches, and take off the earrings which they wore as charms dedicated to a patron saint. Governor of Madras, Lord William Bentinck, sanctioned these changes against council in November 1805. On top of this, General Sir John Cradock, the commander-in-chief of the Madras army, ordered sepoys to wear round leather hats instead of turbans. These hats looked European in general, but were mainly worn by Indians who converted to Christianity in particular. All these changes were against the warning of a military board that had declared sepoy uniforms should be given every consideration which a subject of that delicate and important nature required. But Governor Bentinck and General Cradock did not care about local customs or the feelings of their sepoys. In 6 months, the sepoys got frustrated with the insensitive rule, and in May 1806, 2 soldiers, Anantharaman and Sheikh Abdul Rahman, a Hindu and a Muslim, protested with the company along with 19 other sepoys. The British were intolerant to dissent. They awarded 90 secular lashes to both Anantharaman and Abdul before dismissing them from the army. The other 19 were lashed 50 times and made to seek pardon from the East India Company. The company made an example out of them to crush all future dissent, but resentment brewed. Sepoys conspired with civilians to take over the Vellore fort. Although it is not clear why civilians supported sepoys, but the conspirators chose Shahzada Hyder Ali, Tipu's son, who had joined the Marathas after Tipu's death, to be their king. Conspirators decided to gather at Vellore fort on 9th July 1806, the day when one of Tipu's daughter, Noorul Nisam Begum, was to be married to Sayyid Nizamuddin of Mysore in Vellore. After Tipu was massacred 6 years ago in 1799 in Srirangapatnam, his wives, children and servants all lived as pensioners of the East India Company. They lived in one of the apartments in Vellore fort. The plotters wanted to get rid of the new dress code and the East India Company and bring back their native rulers. They thought taking over the fort would inspire a bigger revolt, and the wedding provided them cover. One Mustafa Beg, who came to know about the plot, informed his commander, Lieutenant Colonel Forbes, about it. When Forbes sought the opinion of native officers, they dismissed the conspiracy and called Mustafa Beg insane and confined him. On 9th July 1806, the day of the wedding, the garrison at Vellore fort had 4 companies of the British infantry and 3 battalions of Madras infantry. Amelia Ferrier, wife of fort's commander, Lieutenant Colonel John Fancott, retired to bed with the children at 10 p.m. Fancott was sympathetic to the cause of Indian sepoys. Gunfire at 2 a.m. woke up the Fancotts in terror. The commander went to the window to see what was happening, but the gunfire increased. 500 sepoys blasted into the fort. He asked Amelia to fetch a lamp so he could write a letter. Amelia did so and closed the window because the firing kept going on. Colonel Fancott went out after finishing his letter, leaving his wife and children behind. Amelia heard no sound between 3 and 4 a.m. until it resumed again at the European barracks. The sepoys killed 14 of their own officers and 115 of the 69th Regiment while they were asleep in their barracks. By dawn, the mutineers pulled down the Union Jack flag, hoisted the Royal Tiger flag of Tipu Sultan, and declared Shahzada Ali as their king. But none of Tipu's sons were present. The sepoys went berserk after that. They first cleaned the treasury, then raided the munitions depot, leaving them in control of the formidable fort. They went on a looting spree and got drunk on a large cache of arak. The mutineers also fought with their own colleagues who did not actively participate in the act. In the absence of any leadership, the mutineers failed to firmly secure the fort's entrance or man its ramparts. In the confusion, a British officer, Major Coops, escaped and alerted the garrison in Arcot at 5 am. Colonel Sir Robert Rollo Gillespie was one of the most capable and energetic officers in India at that time. He left with a troop of 20 soldiers within a quarter of an hour ahead of the main relief force. The reinforcement, comprising the British 19th Light Dragoons, Galloper guns, and squadron of Madras cavalry, covered the 26 kilometers between the two garrisons in about 2 hours and reached Vellore by 7 am. Back in the apartment, Amelia was cowering for cover from incessant gunfire and looting with her children and Aya in tow. She was hoping Colonel Gillespie, who was supposed to spend some time with her family, would come to their rescue. She was holding her husband's watch and counting every horrid minute go by. On arrival, Colonel Gillespie saw some 60 men commandeering the ramparts without ammunition. Unable to gain entry from the main gate, he climbed the walls with a rope and a sergeant's sash lowered to him. To gain time, he led a bayonet charge on the ramparts with the men. When the reinforcements arrived, Colonel Gillespie made it blow open the main gate. The 19th and the Madras cavalry then charged and sabred any sepoy who stood on their way. The increased gunfire immediately filled Amelia with hope. A horse rider came out and called for Amelia by her name. She was so shocked she could not respond. It was Mr. McLean who called out her again, and she came out asking for her husband. Mr. McLean said he was fine. A few hours later, Colonel Gillespie and Mrs. McLean found Amelia and gave her the same assurances. The Arcot forces began combing operations and brought about 100 sepoys who were hiding inside the fort. They were all shot dead by a firing squad on the orders of Colonel Gillespie. Nearly 350 rebels were killed and about the same number were wounded before the fighting had finished. Colonel Gillespie would later say all would have been lost for the British if he would have arrived 5 minutes late. Lieutenant John Blackiston, who blew up the gate, recalled, "It was an act of summary justice and in every respect a most proper one. Yet at the distance of time, I find it a difficult matter to approve the deed or to account the feeling under which I then viewed it." Lieutenant Blackiston would later be tasked to plan the cantonment in Bangalore. Lieutenant Colonel Francott never returned to his family. He was the first victim and Amelia discovered it only by the end of the bloody day. Colonel Miqueras of the 23rd Regiment and Major Armstrong were also killed. The British soldiers did not fight back because they were outnumbered. 15 British officers and over 100 soldiers were found dead at the end of the attack. Mustafa Beg, who had informed the British about the conspiracy, was released after 10th July and rewarded with 2,000 pagodas, a subedar's pension and a medal for his loyalty to the British. After a formal trial, mutineers were punished according to their degree of involvement. 6 mutineers were blown away from cannons, 5 were shot, 8 were hanged, and 5 were transported in different prisons. The 3 Madras battalions involved in the mutiny were disbanded. Governor Bentinck and General Cradock blamed each other for triggering the revolt. Cradock threw the responsibility upon his subalterns for advising the changes, and on the governor for sanctioning them. The governor declared it was all the commander-in-chief's fault. And in the end, in 1807, the court of directors recalled both Cradock and Bentinck back to England. However, the company refused to pay Cradock's journey and he remained a disappointed man throughout his career. The orders regarding the Round Hats were also cancelled. Army inquiries into the mutiny found no involvement of Tipu's family, but they were sent to Calcutta. Tipu's descendants live there to this day in poverty and make their living by pulling rickshaws, while descendants of Shahzada Hyder Ali live in Calcutta, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh and Sydney in Australia. It is important to note that the British brutality did not end with the violent execution of the mutineers. They also attacked the memory of this mutiny by not allowing any written record that explained the narrative of the Indian sepoys. The British recorded the officers' side in every possible way. They authored books about the mutiny in great detail, and Amelia wrote a first-person account in the Sydney Gazette some years later. But no attempt was made to bring out the Indian side. Besides literature, soldiers who died defending the British were given proper burials at CSI Vellore with epithets. while the mutineers were buried in unmarked graves. Because of all these reasons, Vellore mutiny suffers from incredible unpopularity. The only symbol that marks the sacrifice of the mutineers is a small pillar at a traffic junction in Vellore, which was erected by the Tamil Nadu government 200 years after the uprising in 1998. Despite all this, the British did not learn any lessons and repeated the mistake of offending religious sentiments of the soldiers, triggering the 1857 revolt.